Thank you so much for coming tonight. Before we begin the presentation, I just want to remind everybody, I know we've spent some time on please choosing your language of preference for tonight's presentation. Down at the bottom right hand of your Zoom call, you first have to go to the interpretation globe, click mute original audio, and select your language of preference. Again, even if you want to hear this presentation in English, you must first select mute original audio and then select English or Spanish if you prefer. If you need Khmer interpretation, you will go to the mute original audio and will need to call in at the number provided on the right. So you'll go ahead and dial in, enter that access code, and you will have Mr. Austin on for your Khmer interpretation. So again, for everybody on here, please make sure you go ahead and select your language and choose, go ahead and mute original audio. So please know the slides that are presented tonight are in English, but they are being translated currently. We had a few changes and they should be available by Thursday. So I want to thank Maribel and Austin for translating tonight and making this presentation accessible to all. I also want to remind you of some housekeeping items, which are on your slide. If you could go back one slide, Wendy, that would be great. Oops. Thank you. So just for everybody, please go ahead and mute your microphone. We are recording for those of you or people who weren't able to make it. If you don't want to be recorded, please go ahead and turn off your video if you are not comfortable being recorded. So again, we are recording tonight's presentation to make it available for people. And if you don't want to be on video, go ahead and shut your video off. Would also like for you to hang on to your questions until we've got some breaks built in. But if you have burning questions that you need immediately answered or will get answered, Dr. Rosenquist is going to go ahead and compile the questions. We'll answer them as much as we can tonight. And if we don't have enough time, we'll go ahead and answer them directly to you. We'll reach out to you directly. And the last thing is know that we are all learners. We are all learning, especially this complicated topic of budget. We want to respect everybody's knowledge base, from those who know nothing to some people who probably could present on this. So just go ahead and just respect where everybody is, and let's go ahead and have fun and learn together. So let's go ahead to the next slide. Okay. We can go to that slide too. So again, for tonight's session, we have two outcomes for tonight, twofold. First, we want to make sure that everybody has a better understanding of the Long Beach Unified School District budget. We're going to be talking about revenues, expenditures, so how much money we get in, how much money we're spending. We're talking about special ed funding as well, the importance of attendance, contributions from the federal, state, and local governments. We're going to talk a little bit about reporting, what we do with the information, and where you can find more information on the district budget. And the second outcome is that you have a better understanding of the local plan of laws that govern special education. We're going to take a little bit at look at our profile for special education, what the SELPA responsibility is, what exactly is a SELPA, and then where you can find more information on the local plan. So before I go ahead and turn it over to Renee, I just want to thank her. Renee is our executive director of fiscal services. I feel super honored that she was very willing when I just reached out to her and asked her if she would mind presenting together on the budget and share her expertise. So without any hesitation, she agreed, even though she doesn't like to be in front of a big audience. So I just want to thank you, Renee, for taking the time out. Again, Renee has been with the district for 20 years. I've been with the district for 15. So combined, we've got a pretty good history here, and we're still learning every day. So without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and pass this over to Renee.
Thank you very much, Rachel. I appreciate that. So I'm going to take a little bit of time tonight before you get more information about the local control plan. And if we could advance the slide, I'm going to talk a little bit about district revenue, expenditures, and other items. But we're going to start with the district revenue. I think it'll give you a good wide picture of the district, as well as I'll delve into a little bit about the special ed revenue as well. So next slide. So I want to point out, let me fix my screen so I can see a little better. So what I want to start with is our general fund revenue sources. So as a district, we're over $1 billion in revenue and about $1.5 billion with all of our sources of revenue. So I'm not going to talk tonight about adult education funds or CDC, our child development funds. We've got some nutrition funds. And many of you who live within our district boundaries have voted for our bond funds. But what we're going to focus on tonight is our general fund revenue sources, because this is how we operate our school district. This is where our teachers are funded. This is where our special education activities happen. So we're going to kind of narrow our focus to our biggest fund and our most active fund, which is our general fund revenue. I have for you on the screen broken down by 4 different types of funds. The first one is called our local control funding formula, and it's 75% of our revenue, 74.4. It comes from the state. It was a form of revenue that was enacted in 1314, and it replaced our old previous K through 12 finance system from many, many moons ago. This funding source, like I said, is the largest. It's highly based on our average daily attendance, which I'll talk about a little bit more, and has a little bit of funding available for our supplemental and concentration funding that we report in the LCAP, which is our local control accountability plan. So again, 75% of our revenue, a lot of it comes from our attendance, and it is the bulk of our source for funding our school district. The state also provides what we call some state funding sources that are a little bit smaller, but provide sources to us. And I gave you just a few examples too, as a matter of fact. Lottery, you'll hear a lot about, and some special ed. If you've heard about our ACES grant, which helps with our after school activities, that's just some types of state funding that we get to support specialized activities. The federal government also provides funding sources to our school district. And again, I'll talk about, or I'll give you some examples. We have Title I, IDEA, which I'll talk about more in depth. And very recently, you must have heard in the news, CARES Act, SERSA, ARP, all of those acronyms that we've been talking a lot about, which is our federal government's way of providing us funding during this coronavirus time. And finally, we have a small, about 1.5% of our revenue comes from local sources. And these are just local receipt of funds that we use to support educational activities. So you may have heard, it could be as simple as a teacher that gets a grant from Target or a local funding source, or it may be the interest that we earn on our money. But basically, this is the breakdown of the way that we get our revenues. Next slide. So I talked a little bit about our greatest funding source, about $720 million. And this is based on our ADA, which is our average daily attendance. So a great way of looking at how we're doing on our daily attendance is to look at our enrollment trend, right? If we had about 100 students and 98 of them showed up every day, our average daily attendance would be 98 students. So when we look at our enrollment trends, we can see that we're losing students at a rate of about 2% per year, based on many, many different factors. But I provided you some good guidance from 2008, 2009 to present, and even what we're expecting beyond if the trend continues. So if your greatest source of revenue is based on your attendance, which is based on your enrollment, you can imagine that just on the natural, we're going to lose some funding each year related to our loss of enrollment. So this is just a little glimpse at what we're experiencing. But I think I can explain a little bit later on in the slides how that affects our revenue. So all of that information that I've given you is to give you a slide that shows our revenue patterns for the past probably 6 years and our expected revenue patterns for the next 3 years. What you can see is starting in 14-15, we enacted in 13-14 our LCFF formula. In about 14-15 through 17-18, 18-19, the state was rapidly trying to fund us to get us up to where we belonged. So you can see some large increases in funding as we went along. In 1920, we were actually at full implementation. And what you might say is, wow, that's a shame. We're actually losing revenue at full implementation. Well, what that means is the pattern of the income that we've been receiving from the state has changed, and they're now pretty flat funding. And then we're going to get a little reduction based on our enrollment or in our ADA. So you'll start to see the pattern go down a little bit, and you're going to ask me why, Renee, in 21-22, do we have a little bit of a bump there? Based on coronavirus and the effect that COVID-19 has had, the state was able to actually give us a reprieve from our loss of enrollment, and they left us at a flat funding for our enrollment, which helped. And they actually provided us with what we call a COLA, or a cost of living increase. Now, when I say they provided it, that's what's in the January adopted budget. In about a couple weeks, we'll really receive more information from the state on what they're going to provide. So these numbers show what we anticipate them providing, which would mean in 22-23, 23-24, with little intervention from the state, our revenues will start to decline based on our loss of students. So specifically to the special ed revenue sources, I've talked about where our general fund revenue sources come from. Now I'm going to speak more specifically about special ed. So these are the, there's actually just 2 categories, but I've broken out the biggest state funding, which is our AB 602 funding. And this funding is money provided for the special education local plan areas, or our SELPA, which we are just one single SELPA, and it's based on ADA and other data elements. And it's about $45.8 million this year. In addition, the state provides us with other resources such as mental health services, infant discretionary funds, project workability, and a few more small local grants for special ed for about $4.8 million. The federal government also provides some resources. These are grants or entitlements that are called the IDEA, and they come in the form of some local assistance, early intervening services, preschool, mental health, early interventions, all little pieces that make up funding for us to use as a district to support our special ed. And that's about $14.95 million. So our total revenue sources from state and federal resources is about $65.55 million. So I want to take a moment to talk about how we spend that money. And this will be in this category of district expenditures. So like the slides before, I'm going to provide you with data that talks about our general fund operating expenditures, just to kind of give you again, this is about Budget 101, to give you a big picture of what the district does. And then I'll go a little more in depth to provide you some information regarding the special ed pieces. So the big breakdown of expenditure sources is into 2 big categories. We call it personnel, which is our people, and our non-personnel. So this slide breaks down our people, and it talks about how much we spend. In the parentheses, the $391.5 million, those are the millions of dollars we spend in the general fund for our people. In the first category is the certificated salaries, our teachers, our counselors, our principals, our nurses, our people that require a certificate to work in that position. The next section talks about the classified salaries. I just gave some examples: maintenance, finance, custodial, secretaries. These are all the support services you see. So for a really good example, Dr. Heenan is a certificated personnel, and myself, I'm a classified personnel. What both of us have in common, even though we might be categorized into different positions, certificated and classified, is we both have employee benefits. And so what that includes is retirement plans, health and welfare benefits, unemployment, workers' compensation insurance, all things that are cost of having employees. So think about any business running out there, they have the cost of paying the employee, but there's also other pieces that go along with it. And so those three categories make up about 85% of our district budget. So just to repeat that again, 85% of our district budget is in people. So we'll go to the next slide and talk about the expenditure sources other than people. We've got some areas for books and supplies. As you can imagine, as a school district, we purchase textbooks, paper, custodial supplies, food, an array of things that we need just to operate. In addition, we have services and other operating expenditures. These are things like service agreements, contracts with lawyers, travel and conferences, our insurance costs that aren't related to employees, leases, utilities, all of those things are kind of our operational expenditure pieces. And finally, we have a category called capital outlay, which is about a tiny bit of our general fund budget. And if anyone's been listening, you're going to ask, well, wait, Renee, I know that we're at schools. I see capital expenditures, land, buildings, equipment improvements going on all the time at our schools. That's why I mentioned we're concentrating on the general fund. So when we go out to the community and we get bonds, we put those in a separate fund and account for them differently. So this little piece of the pie is just what we spend as a general fund on those kind of things. And it's mostly equipment. So now I want to break down a little further for you the special ed expenditure sources. And I've done something slightly different, so I'll point it out. The first slide is definitely the personnel. And what I've changed about it, and it's definitely the dollars that we spend, but the percentage that I'm showing you today is how much of the general fund expenditures for our special ed. So for example, 70.1 million in certificated salaries is what we spend. And that's about 18% of our total salaries that we spend in the general fund. So these are very specifically special ed teachers, counselors, psychologists, program administrators that support our special ed department. The classified salaries are the same. About 21.5 of our total classified salaries are for instructional aids, interpretation services, speech and language support. Again, these are all just examples. There's many more things that are happening behind the scene. And finally, we also, on any employees, we're gonna spend money on their employee benefits. The second screen is going to talk about the other expenditure sources, non-personnel. So the first thing you'll see is about 1.1 million in books and supplies, or about 2%. Again, these are the same kind of supplies that we buy, but you might be wondering, wow, that's a very small percentage on books and supplies. That's because most of our books, supplies, all of our active things for students and sites that we need comes from our general fund budget. The only things related to that are specifically to special ed might be specialized supplies or things needed specifically for a student or operating the special ed department. But all of the things that come along with going to school and students being here, those come from our general fund budget. Now, our services and operating expenditures, that is, we do have quite a large expense for special ed, and that mostly comes from our non-public agencies and our non-public schools where we service in-house and out of house our special ed students. Travel and conference is a small little piece. I probably should have put on here transportation. That's a large piece that comes with our services and other operating expenditures. And these are just all pieces that support our special ed student program. And finally, somewhat similar, a very, very tiny budget for capital outlay. And I'll tell you, this is mainly, we set aside a budget in anticipation of a possible need for a student equipment or something over $5,000, but we don't necessarily spend it. We're just prepared in the event that we need something, we have the budget available. So what does this break down into? Well, we provide a SELPA annual budget that's presented in a public hearing each May. We have our funding in both our special ed and our budget for the district is a lot of it's based on our ADA. And our revenues for the current year are expected to be for special ed about $65.5 million, and where our projected expenditures are around $200 million. Dr. Heenan actually shared the slide with me, and I really like it. It shows a really good point. On the left-hand side, you have your current California reality and how special ed is being funded. And on the right-hand side, you have our SELPA, our LBUSD, and how we're being funded. And you can see there's not a lot of difference. We're pretty much in alignment with our funding with what California is experiencing. Now, the promised in the middle, promised is a little tough word for me to say, but I guess we're a little hopeful that one day that what we can see is some more federal funding, some more state funding, and just a small portion of our local funding provided to fund our special ed department. So as I showed you before, I showed you the unrestricted fund revenue graph, and I'm going to show you the unrestricted fund expenditures. And again, you see the kind of same pattern with the upward expanding as we receive more money and kind of a slow decline. I'm going to have you, Dr. Rosenquist, just go right to the next slide. This tells the tale. There it is. Our revenue is our blue line. And as we started receiving more funding, we were able to spend more funding. But again, as a very financially savvy kind of taking care of business district, as we started to see a decline in revenue, we also tried to decline our expenditures or match those expenditures as well. So what you see is a pattern of a falling revenue and expenditures until about 21, 22. The revenues are slated to decline. Again, a lot is left up to the state of California, and our expenditures just on the natural are slated to increase. So imagine for yourself your utility bill at home. If you were receiving an increase, you can imagine that we're receiving an increase for over 100 sites for utilities. The cost of healthcare, if you are paying for it or your company's paying for it, you can imagine the increased cost of healthcare. All of those expenditure patterns do cause greater expenditures, and we just have to take a good look at our revenue and start changing our patterns or adjusting as we see fit. So I'm going to speak a little bit about the district reporting piece, just to give you an idea of how everybody knows what we're doing. So who reviews and approves our budget? The local education agencies are required to adopt a budget by July 1st. We will propose our budget at our June 2nd meeting, and in mid-June, we'll be adopting our budget to present to the state of California, which is to present to the county superintendents, and then ultimately the state superintendents all take a look at our budget. They're looking to see that we're in compliance, that we've adopted our standards correctly, that there's no technical corrections, and they also look very closely to see if we will be able to meet our multi-year financial commitments. So the budgets must be approved or disapproved by specific dates. So where do you find budget information? As long as I've been here, we have kept our financial documents on, or actually for at least 15 years, I think they go back to in the 2008, 2000, maybe 2005 era. We have financial documents that include our adopted budget, some audit reports, interims, which is when we come back to the board and we say, okay, we budgeted this much. Now we're going to talk about how we're doing. Those are all available on our district website. So if you go to the A to Z index and you press B for budget, you will, and it'll say financial documents, you will be able to see all that I'm showing you here and more. At the very bottom of the page, there's even an archives, which is why I'm saying there's multiple years associated available on our website. It's a lot of information, but it is some good information that you can see what we're doing, and it's all out there. So what I want to do kind of to finalize the presentation is talk about some myth busting. So on my left-hand side, I have the lottery funds will save the day. We hear that a lot in California. Many of us spend some money on our lottery activities, and we hear that it goes to our instructional institutions. So if you could hit, there you go. The lottery funds for LBUSD make up less than 1.5% of our funding for the general fund. So this isn't exactly the kind of funding that we anticipate or use to kind of get us out of a hole. This is just another source of revenue to support our students. So a cost of living adjustment, I spoke briefly about that. That's the COLA. So when the state gives you 3% more money, you bet it'll impact and it'll offset all of our increased expenditures. And on the fact side, even a large COLA on the state revenues doesn't always cover the cost of increases to our budget. Kind of what I talked about earlier, we are losing funding each year due to declining enrollment, and we've got some increasing expenditures that many of you in your own household are experiencing. So budget cuts can be made entirely from supplies and operating expenses. Well, if you were listening to me earlier, you'll know that LBUSD budget is about 85% salaries and benefits. That's our people. So if there's ever an area where we require budget cuts or we have to look, really looking at the 15% isn't going to get us where we need to be. So if you could, most of our budget is in our salaries and our benefits. I'm going to leave you with one final myth, which hopefully I've given you enough information that you might be able to answer this on your own. The special ed revenue covers costs for maintaining our special ed program. And the answer to that is the revenues received are far below what is needed to maintain the program. Going back to our triangle diagram, it sure would be great to get some additional revenues from our federal and state governments to help support our program even more. So I believe we have a small moment while I'm still online. If there's any questions, I know that Dr. Rosenquist is taking questions that we can get back to you on, but if there's any pressing questions, I'd be happy to answer them now.
I have a question.
Hello, Robin. How are you doing?
I'm great. So number one is I know that the President Biden has said that he would fulfill the IDEA. He was going to fully fund IDEA. Is that happening or?
So we're still waiting on information from the federal government about what exactly that means. We've heard the same thing, that there will be additional funding in our IDEA grants, and we're hopeful. We want to be hopeful, but we need to wait and see what the final federal funding is like.
And that would be pushing that triangle up to the 40%, right? If it were fully funded.
That's what I think his expectations are, that the more he can shift in providing us with federal funding, that'll shift that triangle up. And then we haven't heard much on the state front. They've been doing little things that I don't want to discount that have been helpful. But again, that would leave the local triangle much better off, but the federal in a little bigger piece.
And I was just wondering if you had the number of how much money the district received from the CARES Act.
So the CARES Act funding is still coming in. It came in different pieces right now and received. I just want to be clear. So we've been allocated approximately about 180 million. This is my big picture guess. We're still waiting. That's some of the first. That CARES Act actually had two pieces to it, which was their coronavirus relief funds, and we've spent all of that funding. And then they've been calling it ESSER 1, 2, and 3. So that includes the coronavirus, the ESSER 1, the ESSER 2, that's CARES Act, and SERSA, if you've heard that. It's the second act that he did. So as far as the ARP, which is the last piece, we've been given estimates, but I'm not comfortable with what we've been given yet. I'd like to see some more. So between CARES and SERSA, I'd say we're in about the $180 million range.
And that was all put in the general fund and for us to use in the general fund.
Right. That'll all be reported in the general fund. There's two parts to the general fund. I included them as one. There's what we call restricted, right? Because they have very defined restrictions on the CARES Act. So we will be recognizing the revenue and how we're going to spend it in the general fund. And it will look like if you're following anything, it'll look like a blip on the screen, like what happened that year? Look at all that federal money and all that extra spending. And that'll be related to the CARES Act basically starting in 2021 all the way out till 2024. We're going to be trying to monitor it. It expires in 3 different pieces. So it's just a big handful of what we're trying to do. And there's some great ideas out there.
Awesome. And I just had one final question. I'm sorry. Since our revenue is based on enrollment and our enrollment is going down, is there a plan or some sort of campaign to sort of grow enrollment in Long Beach? I know everybody just talks about enrollment is going down as if there's nothing we can do about it. But I was just wondering if there is something.
So I do feel like we do things. We have a couple barriers. Just in general, the population of Long Beach on its own and the number of students or children being born is an affecting factor, right? So even if you're trying to grow enrollment, you're taking them from other districts. And guess what they don't want you to do? Take them from other districts, right? So you can imagine, just like we don't want to send our students to other districts. So we do have very, very specialized programs that do draw in inter-district permits, but there's a lot of hoops that people have to jump through. So it's kind of like our population is limited to Long Beach, Signal Hill, our areas of where our students are. And any growth would be maybe taking away from our private schools. We have a large private school population in Long Beach and or other districts. And that would just add to, the complexity of asking or trying to get transfers in from other students. So I think our programs,
I would have,
but that means that students, we've presented a good opportunity for our programs, but that also means that students either have to live here to go to them or they have to get a permit to come to our district for these awesome programs.
Yeah, because I know we lost a lot of students to private schools because of the pandemic. And also I know of a lot of families that left the district because their students had IEPs and they were in special ed and they left. So I was just wondering, if there was some sort of retention plan, I guess, if you will. But thank you, that does make sense.
Mr. Sanchez, did you have a question?
Yes, thank you. And thank you, Ms. Wickliffe, for bringing up the idea. So my concern is studies have shown that when the district—
Am I supposed to hear?
Can you hear me? When the district—
I don't think he selected his language or—
Oh. Sorry, how about now?
Yes, thank you.
Sorry about that. Forgive me.
No problem.
Well, following to Ms. Wickliffe's comment about IDEA hopefully being fully funded, my concern is that studies have shown when the district gets increased funding for special needs programs, that funding doesn't always necessarily translate to actually increased services to the children themselves. When a district has had a history of being oppositional to requests for additional services for kids, increased funding just means that the district often somehow uses those funds to not mince words, but to fight requests for additional services. How, I'm wondering if there's going to be a guarantee or a way to ensure that any increased funding for special needs is actually going to translate to increased services for our kids in special needs programs.
So there's always a conversation that comes around increased funding, as the model showed in the triangle, that there is a lot of our local funds that aren't slated for special ed that are used for that. So I can say, just amongst ourselves with Dr. Heenan, Dr. Simon, and myself in the finance department, we always look for ways to increase services and provide those services to students and make sure that our students aren't missing out. But you're right, the increased funding does help support support our special ed students in the kind of the lack of funding that we've been receiving all along. So we're always looking for ways to use additional funding. I know the special ed department is constantly looking for ways to apply for grants or additional funding sources so that we can continue to fund our needs.
And there was one other question in the chat. It said, I read somewhere that teachers are getting a 2% raise. Renee, you alluded to the fact that we are 85% for employees, and we do have a declining enrollment. So she's very much in support of teacher increases salary, but she's just trying to understand how that increase can happen.
So yes, the teachers are receiving a raise. Well, I'm sorry, they've been offered a raise. It'll be voted, they voted to accept it, and it'll be voted on at our next board meeting. So once that's approved, we will put the motion in motion, the cost for that. So the funding of a raise is a really interesting proposition. We are actually in a really good financial situation, meaning somewhat like your own savings account. So the district does have a fund balance right now. So we have looked at ways to support the raise, utilizing some of our fund balance, utilizing some of our CARES Act funding that might be applicable. And we are still going to be in good shape. We are required to file a financial report with our county office. It's actually on the page right now. It's called the AB 1200. And this funding, this document shows that even with giving this raise, we're going to be able to afford it, and it shows it for the next 3 years. So again, we do all of our research, all of our information to look at the funding sources that we have. And again, that's going to be an increase to our certificated salaries and benefits. But we have provided the documentation and do know that as a district, we can afford this raise and afford to compensate our teachers in the manner that you know, likewise with other teacher salaries, and keep up with that kind of information.
Okay. Any other questions for Renee? Because I know she's off to another meeting as well, but I wanted to give everyone the opportunity to ask our fiscal expert. And if questions do come up, we'll go ahead, Renee, and then I'll get them to you, and then we'll get them back to anyone who has additional questions.
Thank you very much.
I'm sorry, my question is there a hiring freeze? I know that there was like before the pandemic. Is the district still hiring?
The district is still looking at hiring. Again, like the CARES Act will bring additional dollars into the district where we are going to have to hire and personnel to support you were involved in the budget engagement process. So all the things that we're looking to support with our CARES Act. So we are still very much reviewing the expenditures, making sure that we're within line. But specifically, there's not a hiring freeze like there may have been in the past. We're actually looking to make sure that we can support our students coming out of these pandemic years and provide the staffing necessary to do that. Thank you all. I want to thank you all for your time. I'm going to run to my next meeting, but again, I appreciate the opportunity. Thank you, Dr. Heenan, and everyone on board. I appreciate it, and I will see you all, and I'll look at some questions if you have some later. Thank you.
Mary. Take care.
Take care.
So, wow, she's brilliant, and I love working with her. I learn from her every day, every year. So right now we're going to shift gears a little bit. People have asked to talk specifically about the special education local plan area, or the SELPA. So Wendy, if you could go to the next slide. So more specifically, I'm just going to, in the respect of everyone's time, briefly cover the two major laws that govern for special education, talk a little bit about our student population within LBUSD who have disabilities, and then talk more specifically about the local plan and the responsibilities of a SELPA director, and that is to implement this local plan. So I'll talk a little bit about that on the next few slides. Next slide, please. So I know that most of you all know historically our children with disabilities. There are several laws that have come into play with regards to educating our students with disabilities in our least restrictive environment. And, you know, as you know, historically, several years ago, a lot of our students may have been included in our public schools. However, they were segregated in separate classes. A lot has changed since the IDEA laws, and our district has shifted to obviously a more inclusive education for our students with disabilities. So I know that most of you know the IDEA with Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, as well as our students who have 504 plans or ADA accommodations. And that just focuses on ensuring non-discrimination for individuals who have a mental or physical impairment, which impedes a major impact or major life activity. And that also includes learning. So students who are in the school district not only can qualify for services through an IEP, but through a 504 plan as well. So we've seen some reauthorizations of IDEA, but we're still looking for that funding to come down and support our programs as well. The next slide is just, I think everybody, it's important to understand that in Long Beach Unified, we have about 9,600 students who have a disability, a documented disability. That's about 14% of our student population. And for those of you who don't know, we have 13 eligibility categories that qualify a student to receive special education services. And they're organized by the state into two groups. Some of them are considered a mild to moderate disability, and others are considered severe disabilities. In our district, if you look at the chart, and I'm sorry if the colors are a little hard to read, we have about 37% of our students who have disabilities have the eligibility of a specific learning disability. 21% are categorized as speech and language impaired, and 18% are eligible under the autism spectrum disorder category. We have 11% of our students are eligible under the category of OHI or other health impaired, and we have some students who might have ADHD or other disabilities affecting their health in that category. And 5% of our students qualify for special ed services under intellectual disability. 3% of our students are qualified under emotionally disabled, 2% under multiple disability, and our last category we call low incidence disabilities, and that's less than 1% of our student population has a disability, and they're usually deaf and hard of hearing, a visual impairment, or an orthopedic impairment. So again, our largest qualifying disabilities are SLD, or specific learning disability. Sometimes our students have processing issues where they might hear something and not be able to put it down on paper, or visual processing as far as taking information from the board, putting it down on paper, processing it, and being able to express their learning. And then again, our very large groups, 21% is our speech and language impaired students, and 18% is our students who are on the autism spectrum disorder range. The next slide is SELPA. So I know many of you see when I email you that my title is Director of Special Education in SELPA. Nobody asks what SELPA is, but I know most people don't know what a SELPA is. So let me briefly explain. In California, we have thousands of school districts. Some of them are large, like LA Unified, Fresno, Long Beach Unified. And then we have other districts who are so small, they might have 100 students or less in a school district. A lot of them are up north in rural areas in the middle of the state. And for large districts, getting specialized services to students might not be that difficult because we're in urban areas and we have resources around. We have people who have the credentials to work with our students with disabilities. But for those who are in a rural area, they might not have, or even a farm area, they might not have anybody who is qualified to work with a student with who has occupational therapy needs. So when I go up to my SELPA meetings, when I meet other directors, they say they don't have anybody who's an assistive technology specialist. They don't have a VI teacher. So how are these students going to get served? Well, in 1977, the state of California said that school districts have to form what they call cohorts or SELPAs, okay? And it's a special ed local plan area, so that these cohorts come together and make sure that all the services are provided to students in that area. So there are some school districts that are part of a SELPA that might have 25 districts involved. And then like us, we're called a single district SELPA, where we provide all the services that our students need. So we don't look at ABC Unified for services. We don't need to go to LA Unified for services. We're large enough that we're called a single district SELPA. So I wanted you to know that in most districts, especially large districts, they have two directors. They have a SELPA director who ensures that the services are given to all students. And then they have a special education director who works primarily with program development and within the school district. So in Long Beach, I'm actually both the director of special education and the SELPA director as well. So I need to make sure that all the services are implemented in our district for special education. And I also work on the program development piece to implement all our special ed programs. So I wanted you also to know that we do have a governing board. A SELPA has to have a governing board who is responsible for the special education services. And of course, our governing board is our Board of Education, and they're responsible for oversight of all special ed services in our district. And then last, each SELPA has a document called a local plan. So if we want to go to the next slide, a lot of people are like, well, what is the local plan and where can I find it? So a local plan is a region's plan, and our region is Long Beach, that highlights who's responsible for receiving the funds from the state and the federal government. And then it talks about who is our governing board, who are administrators for special education, and ensuring that we have a sound fiscal plan to implement all the services that we have in the district. And this is only for students who have disabilities that live in our district boundaries. So if you look at just the sections of the local plan, and this document is on our website, there's only 4 sections. And the first section is just on the district information. The second section is what we call the meat of the program and the meat of the document, which talks about the governance and administration. The next section, there is no section C, which is kind of funny. They used to have a section C, but now it's not even part of the local plan. But section D and E are really important aspects of our local plan that are reviewed every year. So we have our service plan, which talks about what services the district provides at every school to every child. And then we have a budget plan, which Renee went over a lot of, and there's in great detail, the document is listed on the website. So if we can go to the next slide, and I'm just gonna briefly talk about, section A is just identifying information, who is in the district, the board, the superintendent, assistant superintendent over special education, talks about the director positions. So everything is outlined all the way for administration in special education. Section B, like I said, is considered the meat of our document, and it talks about the governance of the district, the responsibilities of receiving funds and allocating them to the special education program. And the last section, last part of section B talks about the required policies of the district that are federal law. So on the right-hand side of your slide, it talks about the district. Every district has to, or every SELPA has to have policies or procedures relating to these 23 areas. So of course, FAPE, Child Find, IEPs, LRE, procedural safeguards. So everything that you're probably hearing in an IEP meeting or that you've heard in the district about, we must have interagency agreements with like the regional center. Everybody has to be highly qualified. So every single district or SELPA is responsible to have a policy in every single area identified on the right-hand side. Next slide, please. And again, section D and E are our annual budget and service plans. The annual service plan discusses every service we provide to students in our district. So for example, we provide specialized academic instruction, speech and language, occupational therapy, counseling, transportation. the list goes on and on. But what we're required to do every year is report to the state on what programs or what services are being provided at each and every of our 84 schools. So it is a very long document, but basically what we're doing is making sure that our students, wherever they go to school, are getting the services that they need, and we're reporting that to the state. On the right-hand side, the annual budget plan is a detailed description of our funding, like Renee went over, and our state, federal, and our local dollars and how they're spent in our district. And again, the focus is on student needs. So like Renee said, we are never and have never been in the position where we say we need a specific piece of equipment for a child and have been turned down because we don't have the money. That has never, and nor will it ever be, an issue in our district. So our students are general ed students first, and our district as a whole understands we need to provide all the services, equipment, and everything our students need, and we will fund that. So again, like Renee said, in May, that plan will go to the board just for the annual budget plan, goes to the board as well as the service plan to review what the projection is for next year with regards to services and budget. The last piece, I'm just going to talk briefly about a SELPA director. So a lot of people say, what on earth does a SELPA director do? And SELPA directors have to ensure that the local plan is implemented. So what does that mean? It ensures that students with disabilities receive a FAPE. It ensures that our students are considered general education students first, and they receive all the resources possible to ensure their services for students with disabilities. We ensure that we have a system for identification, assessment, evaluation, and placement for all our students in an appropriate setting, and to make sure that we have a broad range of stakeholders and agencies involved in our SELPA. And CAC is a part of the agencies that are involved. So when the interesting thing is everyone wants to know what Long Beach CAC is doing, because a lot of SELPAs have maybe 1 to 5 to 10 max parents who come to their CAC meetings. So I feel very fortunate that we have such a vibrant community, an involved community, and everybody else is kind of looking for the model of what Long Beach CAC is doing. So Robin, thank you, and Samantha and the team for leading the charge. And the last thing is compliance is a big piece of my job. So I work a lot with the state, getting data to make sure that we're compliant in 17 areas. We are reviewed every year for compliance, and to make sure that our district is in compliance. So I do a lot of federal reporting regarding our students with disabilities. The next slide with the apple just again talks about additional disabilities for a SELPA director, staff development, parent collaboration, parent trainings, interagency agreements, non-public school agreements, making sure that if we can't meet the needs of our students, we have agreements with other schools and private schools that can meet the needs of our students. Again, I work a lot with Renee for our fiscal management, staff development, regional service coordination, program evaluation. So it's a fantastic job, very busy, but I love it. And so what I wanted to do next was just give you an opportunity to look at the local plan on the district website. I know I went through the documents and slides pretty quickly, but I wanted to be respectful of your time because it's 5:59. But the most important thing is I want to make sure you have access or full access to the local plan, to all the information that is on the district website. I'd like you to go ahead and click on that to go under the special education section. And if you go to the SELPA, you'll see a SELPA link, and then the local plan is there for you to view. There's part B in there that only needs to get updated every 3 years, and that's just the governance and administration section. but the local, the service plan and the budget has to go before the board every year, and they're public documents. So please, and I know that Robin has been very interested in this and she asked for this meeting, and I really encourage everybody to be more involved in understanding the service plan and the budget. And if there are any questions, again, please feel free to reach out to any of us. If we don't have the answers, then we can reach out to our people in fiscal services and we'll answer them directly for you. So again, I just want to open it up to any questions so we can possibly answer them, and then wish you well on a good night. So are there any questions? Dr. Rosenquist, do you want to click that link? And I don't know if you can get it from there.
I can't, but I'm going to put it in the chat.
Okay, perfect. Okay, I think I have a question or two. Oh, I'm glad. Thank you for coming. I see that one of them. The second question is, how much money is available for staff training? So I don't have, Ms. Carey, like an exact figure at this time, but I can work with Renee to get that for staff. It's staff development and professional development line item. So I'll get that for you. Okay, so Dr. Rosenquist put in the link where you can access the local plan on our website, and please know it's going to be updated. If you look at the last one, it was from 2013. So that's the last time the district had updated their local plan. And now the state has come in and said it needs to be done every 3 years for Part B. And then every year we have to submit the local budget and service plan. Okay, what other questions do we have? Do we have any other questions?
I have no other questions in the chat.
Okay, perfect. Okie doke.
I just wanted to say, Dr. Heenan, I really do appreciate you doing this meeting, and I'm glad that we're going to share it on the district website, because I do think it's really fascinating information. The first time I heard it, and I feel like the more I see it, the more I learn. And so so thank you for doing this. I think it's I hope you do it every year for CAC, or twice a year, however many times it takes.
Yeah, I would love to. And like I said, as you know, I definitely look for my experts to lead the discussion on budget. And so everybody's super willing to help out and share the information, and it's there. And that's what we need to do, is make sure that people ask questions. You know, people, I was hoping that more people would come on tonight and ask these questions about the budget. So we need to really work, and that's part of my job with SELPA, work with the legislation to push. And that's what we do, a lot of legislative push with our local governors and senators, and to try to get more money for special education. That's one of the big items on SELPA's lead. I have a quick education for CDE. Her name's Heather Calomise, and she is really pushing for some of the, I talked a little bit about the indicators that we are responsible for compliance. And they're really pushing that these indicators are involved in our LCAP, or and also that they're involved in our dashboard. So it's not a separate system of accountability, that we are number one, represented in the LCAP, and we are in there. It's just not a heavy focus, but that's going to change in the next couple of years. But the dashboard will be a really shift for us, because our information is going to be front and center. And I think the districts will all have and feel more responsibility for our programs and our program success. It's a great question. All right. So again, thank you so much, everybody, for logging on. Feel free to email or call any of us, and we're happy to answer any of the questions you have. Thank you again for everybody who helped tonight setting this up, and we look forward to seeing you all